new nuggets from Elizabeth Inman Ministries. I'm so excited to get to talk with you guys today, and we're going to look at 1 Kings 8:52 through 66. Now, this is when Solomon is praying at the temple dedication. He had built this temple, and the verses before talk about King David had been told, "Your son will build my temple." So Solomon has built this beautiful temple exactly according as to his instructions from God, and here they are dedicating it. So Solomon is praying, and he's praying that God see and hear his people and listen to their petitions. So we know that God hears and he listens, and so we seek him in earnest on that promise. Not that we have to beg him to please listen, but we stand on that promise. God, I know you're there, and I'm here to talk to you about. It's a whole different mindset about prayer when you understand the attitude you come in when you come in prayer. There's a whole mindset of you're praying in belief. You are praying knowing what he's going to do, knowing you're seeking his will, and that he will show you that and answer that prayer. So Solomon asked that God see and hear his people and listen to their petitions. And he recognized God's goodness. He remembered that God called them up, brought them out from bondage, called them as his chosen people, and led them out of Egypt. So in all this, Solomon was on his knees at the altar, and it says his hands were up. He is in total submission and humility to God. This is how we come in prayer. It goes back to what I said a minute ago about the attitude behind our prayer. It goes back to that. It goes back to the posture of prayer, that we are seeking him and he is above, and we are seeking him and desire to be in his presence. This is prayer, entering into his presence, just picturing yourself standing before him, kneeling before him as Solomon did, and worshiping and praying and being able to talk with him, make your petitions known, put your burdens down at his feet. It's just a beautiful idea here, a beautiful picture of prayer that just melted my heart this morning when I read it and just saw a beautiful, gorgeous picture of what happens when we go to prayer, when we go to him in prayer. So Solomon was truly humbled and praying and seeking God. That is a leader setting that example for his nation. You see, he was the king, and this is what they saw him doing. They saw the king humble himself, just like Jesus humbled himself when he came to this earth for us. Solomon was reflecting that. And that's how we're supposed to live, reflecting his character, his humility, his love. Those are the things we're supposed to be reflecting in our lives. And this is what Solomon was doing on display for all of his nation to see. And there was a boldness about that. He didn't fear, what will they think of me if they see this? Or what might they say? Or does this make me look weak? None of that was on his mind. He was honoring his Father. He was honoring the Father at that altar on his knees, seeking, setting that example that they might see and know that they could trust him as a leader, and he could build that rapport with them as a leader, as a godly man, as a wise man. And then when he stood from praying, he blessed the congregation. He reminded them how faithful God had been. None of his promises had been forgotten. Everything he promised he had done. He had been faithful. All that they had needed, he had provided. Protection, provision, he had been faithful. So he reminded them of these things, and he encouraged them to incline their hearts towards God. So we need to encourage each other to incline our hearts towards God. We need to encourage each other to always seek God. By example, by just encouraging words, praying for somebody, intercessory prayer that they seek God in this, and let him work in their lives and accept his will and walk in his path. This is how we do that. Encourage them to incline their hearts towards God. And so he asked the Lord to remember his prayer and be glorified. So what he was wanting to do is always glorify God in all that he did. He wanted to bring God delight, glory. This is what he was doing, and he was doing it boldly, leading by example, and teaching his nation how to do this. This is what churches should be like. This is what churches should be. It's just pastors, leaders, teachers that seek God with all their heart wholeheartedly. Kneel at the altar, pray, encourage their congregation in God's truth and love and salvation, and encourage them in these things and to incline their heart towards God. And then their congregation goes out and takes that and brings others in that can grow in that as well. This is how it's supposed to be. This is joy and worship. It said their hearts were glad. They had 2 weeks of celebration and festivities around this temple dedication. Their hearts were glad. Sounds similar to revivals today when we take that time and we focus special and our hearts get glad from it, right? And this is just a taste of what it's going to be like in heaven when we're all able to be together in joy and worship and praise for eternity with him. The church should reflect that taste of heaven, that vision of what it's going to be like. This is what we're to strive for. I love you guys.